evening and welcome to BBC News. The veteran left-wing MP Jeremy Corbyn has swept to victory in the Labour leadership election. Mr Corbyn, who 3 months ago began the campaign as an outsider, won massive support with nearly 60% of the vote. Now that was way ahead of his nearest rival, Andy Burnham, who secured just under 20%. Mr Corbyn thanked Mr Burnham and the other candidates, Liz Kendall and Yvette Cooper, saying they'd helped reinvigorate the party. And he promised to fight for a more tolerant and inclusive Britain. Our political editor Laura Koonsberg reports now, and her report does contain some flash photography.
He's in there somewhere, the new Labour leader who wants to be your next Prime Minister. They knew it, he knew it. These rivals and the Labour establishment lost the argument.
Jeremy Corbyn elected as leader of the Labour Party.
This humble rebel had to be persuaded even to stand, yet 250,000 people named him their first choice. Months ago that seemed impossible. By this morning the only surprise was the scale of his support. A new suit, maybe, but ideas he's held for decades.
We don't have to be unequal. It doesn't have to be unfair. Poverty isn't inevitable. Things can and they will change. Thank you very much.
But many of these MPs' politics are so far from his, they will not grin and bear it. 7 of the shadow cabinet have already resigned.
He's done it not by a small margin, but by a mile, a thumping victory. The unexpected candidate is now Labour's accidental leader.
This is an enormous achievement.
Can you believe that you've won by such a margin? The 3 flags to the audience is already voting for you.
But his face betrays how brutal the coming months may be. But tonight, euphoria. These are his people. Nearly 100,000 of them signed up just to back him. A new audience for the ideas of old Labour. And some of today's biggest smiles were from vintage faces. He told me he hadn't been so happy in years.
People are sick and tired of the last 30 years in which ordinary people got left behind while the bankers made a fortune.
What do you make of the scale of the result, Ken?
Just stunning. No one could have predicted. Oh, he will. With the majority like this, they'll have to. Oh, dear.
Corbyn and his new deputy, Tom Watson, triumphed under new party rules. Ed Miliband's real legacy, perhaps. Labour in the hands of its supporters, not its MPs.
Our party is a broad church, always has been, always will be, and the task of the leader is to reach all parts of that movement, and I believe that's what Jeremy should do.
He could only have dreamt of this.
Fantastic moment, fantastic mandate for change in Britain, fantastic enthusiasm for real democratic politics. It's a great day.
For our party membership to be even bigger. It's already now become the largest membership ever in the history of the Labour Party.
An overwhelming moment for his supporters. Overwhelming too for his wife.
We walked together, we marched together down that road.
But look who came to join the party. The most powerful union boss in the land, Len McCluskey. One of the first to embrace him on stage.
This is unlike anything the Labour Party has seen for decades. You can't feel the passion, the faith, the joy of what they've achieved in this room. But can they ever persuade the whole nation they have the right answers?
They are convinced these lyrics could become familiar again. The red flag, Labour's old song. But could the rest of us ever join in?
Do you think that the general public would choose Jeremy Corbyn as a Prime Minister?
Well, we'll have to see, won't we? But, you know, what they do want is politicians of conviction, people who say what they mean. They are sick to death of people coming on looking like they're reading off a script. Well, that's clearly not Jeremy Corbyn.
Away from the crowds, one cool Labour head told me it's unpredictable, exciting or fatal. Whether you think it's a glorious fantasy or a nightmare for Labour, it is now real. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Westminster.
So what do we know about Labour's new leader, and where does he stand on the big issues facing the UK? Our deputy political editor, James Landale, has this assessment of Jeremy Corbyn's background and policies.
Meet Comrade Corbyn.
We are a socialist party and there are social solutions to the problems, and the solution is socialism at the end of the day.
For more than 30 years, the MP for Islington North has perched on the left of Labour politics, opposing Britain's nuclear deterrent, associating with controversial causes and people, doggedly rebelling against his party more than 500 times, a man whose appearance has changed as little as his opinions.
Is that the jumper that your mum made?
Yes, it is.
So the election of this 66-year-old former prep school boy has surprised many in his party, including his brother.
He's surprised to be in the situation he is now, but, you know, a month ago it was becoming clear that there's a hunger in the country for proper democracy, no more spin politics.
And your parents, if they could see it,
they would be totally over the moon.
And those with whom he stood shoulder to shoulder for so many years, today repaid the favour.
He's a friend of Ireland. He will be an outstanding leader of his party.
So what are the policies of this left-wing leader? He opposes Conservative cuts to welfare and other spending. He wants to raise taxes on the rich and businesses. He'd renationalise the railways and big six energy companies. He'd get the Bank of England to effectively print money to spend on infrastructure, which some fear could mean higher inflation. And he'd almost certainly order Labour MPs to oppose airstrikes over Syria.
This election shows that Labour is now a serious risk to our national security, to our economic security, and to the security of your family.
But with many Labour MPs also worried about his policies, Mr Corbyn's task now is to unite his party. Today, at least 7 MPs left the shadow cabinet. Many others are considering their futures. Not all are fans of Che Guevara.
I voted for somebody else, so clearly it's not my view that he is the right person to lead the Labour Party.
I fear that we may not win the election.
Do you think Jeremy Corbyn is the man who's going to lead you to victory at the next election?
I think it's much too early to tell.
Of course I can see Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, as Prime Minister.
Seriously?
I can, because I believe in Labour victories.
But those victories will come only if Mr Corbyn can appeal to the public in Tory England and SNP Scotland.
Unless he can very quickly demonstrate that Labour's got a credible chance of winning a UK general election, then people in Scotland are going to conclude there's little point in voting Labour, and that actually the only alternative to continued Tory government might well be independence.
Open your hearts and open your minds.
Jeremy Corbyn's first act as leader was to go on a demo for refugees. His huge task now is to turn Labour from a party of protest into a party of power. James Landale, BBC News, Westminster.
Greg Dawson from Radio 1's Newsbeat spoke to Jeremy Corbyn shortly after he became the new Labour leader, and during the interview, Mr Corbyn outlined the way he plans to change politics in Britain.
I don't respond in any way to personal abuse that's thrown at me. I don't make personal abuse against anybody. I don't make personal remarks. I believe in politics and I keep it political. Secondly, you'll find that I'm going to try and conduct Prime Minister's Question Time, less theatre and a bit more substance. And
how's that going to happen?
Well, it's going to happen that the Prime Minister, I noticed, quite enjoys bits of repartee. Well, it's going to be one way, because my view is that the questions in Parliament should be the questions that people out there want asked. Why 1 million people use food banks, for example? Why people are still homeless in Britain? Why there are so many graduates who can't get jobs? Those are the kind of questions that need to be put and to influence government policy in that way, and I'm going to be resolutely political in the way I ask questions.
Just quickly on Question Time, while you mentioned it, there are some reports already that you will sit out some sessions and put other MPs at the dispatch box to face David Cameron. Can you confirm that's going to happen?
I've been thinking about this, of how we might change the way questions are done, because we've got 232 Labour MPs. They've all got brains, they're all intelligent, they're all talented, they've all got knowledge, they've all got ideas. They should all be used. And so we share it out a bit, and so other MPs also ask questions. I haven't quite worked out how that's going to be done yet. I've been in touch with the Speaker's office and asked if I can have a discussion with Mr Speaker about this, and we'll see how it goes. But I do think the public want to see their politicians acting in a different way. What's brought young people into our campaign is that they were written off by political parties, but they'd never written off politics. And what we've got is a huge number of young people, very enthusiastic, brimming with ideas. Those ideas have got to be heard.
Jeremy Corbyn speaking to Radio 1 Newsbeat there. Our political correspondent Eleanor Garnier is at Westminster for us. Eleanor, from long before the result, people said they wouldn't serve under a Corbyn leadership. What's the latest on that?
Well, tonight we know that 7 shadow cabinet members have already resigned. Many others are considering their positions very seriously. Some news that we do have tonight is that Rosie Winterton will stay on as Labour's chief whip, in charge of party discipline under a leader who you could say when he was an MP was probably her biggest headache. So an interesting appointment there, and she will of course have a very difficult job ahead of her. Other things I'm hearing tonight, Angela Eagle and John McDonnell are 2 MPs in the frame for the position of Shadow Chancellor, which is obviously going to be a key position in any Jeremy Corbyn cabinet. But big names that we've seen go, Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, Tristram Hunt, Shadow Education, also Rachel Reeves. So some big names leaving, and the questions are obviously who will replace them. I understand that we will start to hear names tomorrow, and we, I think, can expect the full Shadow Cabinet team to be announced by Monday. Now, one of the first names to come out who said he was leaving was that of Jamie Reid, an MP who actually announced his resignation while Jeremy Corbyn was still on the stage doing his acceptance speech. And what Jamie Reid said was that, yes, he acknowledged it had been a resounding victory, but he said Jeremy Corbyn just didn't, in his opinion, offer the vision that was needed to put Labour back in power in 2020.
Was it you who turned off?
As somebody who believes passionately in the Labour Party and Labour values and wants to put those values into practice, we have to do that in government. And the way that our history shows us, the way we put our ideas into practice, the way we create the NHS, the welfare state, national minimum wage and independence of the Bank of England and everything else, is by being in sync with the attitudes, ambitions and aspirations of the British people. So that's what I care passionately about. I care too about the Labour Party outside of London. It's a very different party outside of London, and I think there's a lot of thinking and a lot of work to be done now, and I'd like to devote myself to my constituency and the ambitions of my constituency and that work of reconnecting the Labour Party with the British people. So that's why congratulations, Jeremy, huge congratulations to you. And I think the excitement and the enthusiasm he's brought into this campaign is truly commendable. But I think I better spend my energies doing something else for the time being within the party.
Now, by this morning, it wasn't a surprise that Jeremy Corbyn was going to be elected as the new leader, but I think what was a surprise was the huge margin that he won by, not just among the new members that had joined up with that £3 fee, they could join up and be an affiliated supporter, but also amongst the party membership, those who have annual subscriptions to the party, but also those who are affiliated members, those who get their affiliation through the unions, for example. And Jeremy Corbyn did have the biggest backing from the unions across the board compared to any of the other candidates. And we heard today from the General Secretary of Unison, Dave Prentice. He said the election of Jeremy Corbyn was a good day for Labour, and he said Jeremy Corbyn did offer a vision for the party.
Really great day. We came out of the last election in quite a bad way. Only 3.5 months since then, and today we're electing Jeremy as our leader. Tremendous result, giving a message of hope that had almost been extinguished over the last 5 years, that we can hope that there are alternatives, that we can have that fairer society that we believe in, that everybody believes in, and that we don't have to have all of these restrictions that are taking place. And there are very few people at the top doing exceptionally well, but the rest of us still paying the price of the failure of the banks. I've spoken on platforms with him, I've been at the hustings when he's been there. He brings a different dimension. I'm very friendly with the other people, other candidates, and they got massive rounds of applause today, but he stood out. People want to have a vision. They want a political party that's got a vision, not just concerned about the mechanics. They want a party party that's honest and says we don't believe in privatisation, rather than saying we believe in less privatisation. They want a party that says that we don't believe in these public service job cuts, instead of a party that says, oh, we don't believe that they should be so quick, these job cuts. What he's doing is giving a real alternative that people can stand behind, and that is what they want more than anything. They've been battered, they've been beaten, and they really do want to believe that, you know, that there is vision, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that is what Jeremy is giving them.
Jeremy Corbyn himself admitted that he was a bit surprised about the margin of his victory, but he said that politics has changed, that he had proved that politics had changed. And when he gave his acceptance speech, he said that he would reach out to a broad church, and he urged other MPs to do the same, to welcome in the thousands upon thousands of new members that have joined the party during the leadership campaign. Now, Ed Miliband, of course, Labour's former leader, said that Jeremy Corbyn had a very big job to do to unite the party.
Well, I congratulate Jeremy Corbyn on a very clear victory in the Labour leadership election. I congratulate Tom Watson as having been elected as Deputy Leader. I'll be offering Jeremy Corbyn my support, and I hope people across the party do so too. I hope also, and I expect him to do this, that Jeremy reaches out to all parts of the party, because he has a big job to do to seek to unite the party, and I believe he does intend to do that, and I hope he does.
So, Alan, there's some advice there from the old leader to the new one, but just how different is it now going to be under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership?
I think it's going to be very different to what we've seen before. Remember that all the Labour established figures, those that have been in charge for the last 10, 20 years, they disagree with Jeremy Corbyn's election. They don't think that it is the right decision, and that's why Jeremy Corbyn has got such a big task on his hands to reunite the party after a very bruising campaign, and of course a very bruising general election too, when Labour really took a huge defeat. One thing that Jeremy Corbyn has already said that he wants to do differently is shake up Prime Minister's questions, and in fact he said that it won't be him necessarily every week standing across the House of Commons from David Cameron. He wants to open it up and give other MPs the chance to take on David Cameron and ask David Cameron questions every Wednesday. Jeremy Corbyn has already written out to all of the Labour Party members. He's written an email tonight in which he has asked them if they have got any questions that they want him to ask David Cameron at Prime Minister's Questions. So you can already see the changes that Jeremy Corbyn wants to bring in, and part of his appeal was that he was unlike any of the other mainstream politicians. He looks different, he sounds different, and that was the attraction. Many said they were joining, that they liked when they joined up Labour. They joined up to pay that £3 to have a say in this Labour leadership contest. The one really important thing to note is that Jeremy Corbyn doesn't have any experience at this level in politics. Yes, he's been an MP for more than 30 years, but he spent all that time on the backbenches. He doesn't have any shadow cabinet experience, let alone any shadow ministerial experience. So this is all going to be extremely new for him, and that's why the next 24 hours, the next week, is going to be so important as he puts everything in place, puts that team around him, and also, of course, works with Tom Watson, who was elected today as the deputy leader of the Labour Party. They've got a big job on their hands, and I think we will start to hear the new names of those who are going to be in that shadow cabinet team, those around Jeremy Corbyn tomorrow, in the next 24 hours, and certainly I think we'll have the full team by Monday.
Anna, thank you for that. Ellen Garner there for us in Westminster. Well, one place where the contest was keenly watched is Nuneaton, a seat which Labour had to win in the general election in order to take power. They lost it to the Conservatives. Catherine Stanchesnin is in Nuneaton for us.
The Conservatives actually doubled their majority here in Nuneaton at the last election. It had been a key target for Labour, and it signified the start of a very bad night, and early results showing that not only had they failed to gain back this seat, but they'd actually lost more votes. So is Jeremy Corbyn the man to turn voters here back to the Labour Party? I'm joined by Sally Chater now, who's a Labour Party supporter and is very happy about the news today. Just tell us why you're so thrilled that Corbyn is now the leader of the Labour Party.
is offering something new and something different. You hear the general opinion around friends and family, and nobody offers anything different. Now Jeremy's there, and it's something totally different. There's an alternative.
Just give your reaction to that result, because it's an overwhelming victory. Were you surprised about that?
Very surprised. I was really hoping he was going to win, but I couldn't see it by that much of a landslide. I thought it was going to be close, but I thought it would probably go to second vote choices.
What about the fact that, you know, in a place like Nuneaton, the Labour Party has to win voters back from the Conservatives, really? Is Jeremy Corbyn able to do that?
He's getting people interested again. People weren't talking. There's been more interest since he got nominated for the leadership than there were for the general election. So people are listening again. You hear, oh, they're all the same, that nobody offers anything different. Now there is another choice from Jeremy. And
someone who's not quite as happy today, Labour councillor Phil Johnson. Now, you were backing Liz Kendall.
Yes, I was.
How are you feeling?
Disappointed. Not surprised, because I think it was prefigured. I think the margin of victory is a big surprise, but he has a mandate now as leader of the party, so we'll see how he performs.
It's not the mandate that you or a lot of senior Labour figures wanted, or MPs for that matter. Is the party likely to tear itself apart now?
I don't think tear itself apart. I don't think the SDP type 80s thing is on the agenda. But I think there's going to be some difficult times. But we've got an election test coming up next May. Round here we've got borough elections. There are elections in Scotland and Wales and the London mayoral elections. And we'll see how the party performs under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership.
So there you go, some reaction to today. There is evidence that UKIP and the Greens have taken votes from Labour here previously. Will they now return?
And more reaction throughout the evening. Let's get all the sport now. A full roundup from the BBC Sports Centre with Matt Smith. Good evening, Matt.
Evening, Chris. Evening to you. Manchester United are up to second place in the Premier League this evening with a 3-1 win over perennial rivals Liverpool at Old Trafford. New big money signing Anthony Martial got the home side's decisive third goal on his debut. Adam Wilde reports.
For the home fans inside Old Trafford, this was as much about those that had just arrived as it was those that, in the end, never left. David De Gea